The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
The Wednesday edition of the Sports Wrap is in your ears on this first day of November in 2023. I'm Sam Yarnell, in for Jason, as I am every single Wednesday on the show. We got a great program lined up for you today. Big news out of the NFL around 2 a.m. this morning. Scary Halloween night out in Las Vegas. The Raiders cleaning house. It's going to be a whole new sideline for them with a new guy under center this week. We'll get into that and much more NFL news. Jason and I talked about it on the show yesterday. The NFL trade deadline always seems to be quiet, and it was yet again this year. The big moves coming out of Washington. We'll dive into both of those along with all the other trades and talk about the implications that those will have for the teams that the players were traded to going forward the rest of the season. Contender Pretender. It is going to be a crazy week of Contender Pretender on the show this week. I got lots of hot takes. I think everyone might disagree with all 6 of the teams that I've got, but all 3 of my contenders and all 3 of my pretenders. Weird week in the NFL. Had to dig deep to get into these contenders or pretenders, but it'll be a great segment. That's coming up in just about 15 minutes. The World Series is in a very interesting place right now. Adolis Garcia, Max Scherzer, both off the Rangers roster. You'd think that that would swing things in the direction of the D-backs, but then Texas comes out last night and puts up 10 runs in 2 innings. They cruise to that Game 4 victory. We'll dive into that and Game 5 coming up tonight. Texas a win away from their first World Series ever. That's crazy. It feels like the Rangers were always in it, always deep in the postseason. It's crazy to think that they've never actually won the World Series. And we'll wrap things up with some crazy stories out of the NFL. Michael Bidwell had an expose written on him last night. ESPN doing the deep dive into the Cardinals organization, much like they did the same into the Redskins football team Commanders organization under the tutelage of Dan Snyder. Could it be the same path that Michael Bidwell is finding himself going down? We'll talk all about that to wrap up the show, along with some great sports betting news out of the southeastern part of the country. Monumental news coming out of the Seminole tribe down in Florida today on the sports betting front. We'll dive into that as well. But let's start the show with the big news out of the NFL. Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, and the Raiders offensive coordinator, news coming out this morning as well, have all been fired. The wrath of Mark Davis continues and continues. Linebacker coach Antonio Pierce will take over as interim head coach. The Raiders are 3-5 this year. They went 9-16 under Josh McDaniels in year 2 of his, let's not forget, 6-year contract that, since it's a coach, the Raiders are still completely obligated to fulfill. Just a tough spot for the Raiders. They're now going to turn to their 10th coaching figure when you combine head coaches and interims. It's actually their 12th. Sorry, I miscounted there for a second. In 20 seasons, 12 people manning the sidelines, 12 different people heading up the sidelines in 20 seasons for the Las Vegas/Oakland Raiders. Just absolutely disappointing for Las Vegas football fans. Some of the most diehard and I would say best football fans that the NFL has to offer. Champ Kelly is going to take over for Dave Ziegler as interim GM. Dave Ziegler, who, let's not forget, had a stellar, just absolutely spectacular run as Raiders GM, notably gave Derek Carr that huge extension, and then after one season of it, cut him. Just not great performances from Ziegler or McDaniels. I can't say that nobody saw this coming. I think there were odds from one of the offshore sports books. I believe it was Bovada. There were odds for the first coach to be fired. And Josh McDaniels was the second favorite at plus 250. Ron Rivera, minus 200, was the first. that's another story that we got to talk about. How Ron Rivera made it out of the trade deadline as still the head coach of the Washington Commanders. How was he not the first head coach fired with all the locker room issues that team has? They're just prevalent beyond belief. To the Raiders, though, they've got a material problem with Mark Davis. I was listening to CBS Sports Radio last night in the 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. hour. My guy JR Sport Brief, shout out to JR. He said something very interesting about Mark Davis. The Davis family, right? One of the most famous families in American football history. Al Davis, one of the best owners maybe of all time. Just win, baby. That's exactly what the Raiders haven't done since Mark Davis took over. It's been a mess, and it's all at the top. This is a team that has talent out the wazoo. They've got one of the best wide receivers of the last 15 years on their team. Derek Carr is not a bad quarterback. I will stand by that. He's on bad teams with bad management. This goes back to 2018 when Mark Davis really took the reins of the Raiders. He gives Gruden the $100 million contract. Gruden resigns amid that scandal. I think that was also ESPN exposing him, by the way. He resigns in the middle of that scandal after collecting $30 million of that $100 million. And then Mark Davis proceeds to sign an agreement with John Gruden to pay him 60 of the 70 remaining $1 million to not coach the team. So he just cost his organization $60 million there. Then he goes out and hires McDaniels to a 6-year contract because, right, the 10-year contract that we had, that didn't work out. So now we'll just do a 6-year contract when a normal head coach's contract in the NFL is 2 or, if they're lucky, 3 seasons. Mark Davis knows that nobody wants to work for him, and he has to offer exorbitant amounts of money and exorbitant contracts to bring people in. That's exactly what he did with Josh McDaniels. So he signs McDaniels to this 6-year deal. And now you would think that Mark Davis understands that he's handcuffed himself. Coming into this season, coming into the Josh McDaniels contract, not even this season, we knew that Mark Davis was handcuffing himself to Josh McDaniels, to Dave Ziegler. And he's only gone and made more of a mess of it now by firing them mid-season. Couldn't even wait until the off. I don't know why they're firing them mid-season either. It's not like this team has anything to play for right now. They're making the quarterback switch to Aiden O'Connell as well. Oh, wow, because Aiden O'Connell's going to win more games right now than Jimmy Garoppolo is. The moves just don't add up. If you're Mark Davis and you really wanted Aiden O'Connell to start, then you'd understand that the season was shot and you wouldn't let go of your coach and create the PR nightmare you have. If you wanted to win now, then you'd fire your coach, sure, and go to a new guy in the locker room who may understand it better, may be able to facilitate that team better. But you're not starting Aiden O'Connell. You're starting Jimmy Garoppolo, who has won playoff games. I don't care how little he had to do with winning playoff games. He's been there and done that. And quite frankly, when you look at that team with Josh Jacobs, the potential he has, I know he's had a down year this year, but the potential he has, leading rusher in the NFL last year, Devontae Adams, like I said, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL over the last 15 years. In an offense like that, Jimmy Garoppolo should be able to succeed enough to get you to the playoffs. You look at the defense, Max Crosby, Marcus Peters until Monday night. Not sure the injury status of Marcus Peters, but this is a team that has stars and can win. They're just managed so poorly, and it's from the top down. It is the epitome of a top-down downfall. The downfall of the Raiders this season should be put on the shoulders of not Josh McDaniels, not Dave Ziegler. It all goes on Mark Davis. This is a Mark Davis problem in Las Vegas. This has become a Davis family problem. And Mark Davis is doing severe damage to his family's name that has been a cornerstone in the NFL. Wrap it up with the trades from yesterday. I can't talk anymore about how just abhorrent the Las Vegas Raiders are right now. By the way, let's not forget, like a month ago, there was a video that went viral when it wasn't even a month ago. It was a couple of weeks ago when the Aces were in the WNBA playoffs. Mark Davis was flying out of Las Vegas International Airport, and he's playing the slot machine before getting on his flight. This is the guy who we're trusting with one of the most historic organizations in the NFL. Montez Sweat to the Bears. Chase Young to San Francisco. Sweat for a second-round pick. Chase Young for a third-round pick. Dropped ball by Washington. Montez Sweat, though, I will say, a lot of people think that they should have gotten more for Chase Young. Chase Young had off-the-field issues. I've heard it from the media, and I've heard it from people outside the media connected with the team. There were off-the-field issues with Chase Young, and that's why the NFL kind of knew that the price on him was going to be low. Josh Dobbs to Minnesota. He's your new starter if you're a Vikings fan. I like it a lot. I'll get more into that in Contender or Pretender. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Who? He's still playing? Apparently. He's going to Detroit for a 6th-round pick. Rasul Douglas to the Bills. What a letdown for the Bills at the trade deadline again. Classic Brandon Beane for a 2024 pick swap, 3rd for a 5th. The Josh Dobbs is for a 7th to 6th pick swap. And the Jaguars get some help on the offensive line. They get Ezra Cleveland for a 6th-round pick. Quiet trade deadline. Jason and I told you it would be yesterday. Didn't expect more. That's all. We'll get into Contender Pretender next. Jason will stop by on this Wednesday. Sam Yarnell, the Sports Wrap, in your ears. We're back after this. It's the Sports Wrap on the first day of November. Time for a segment we do every week, and I never do it alone. Bring in my esteemed colleague, Jason Page. Find him on Twitter, or X, as he likes to call it, at the back page. I'm at Sam_Yarnell, by the way.
Supposed to be my day. It's supposed to be my day off, by the way. I just want to mention that. It's supposed to be my day off.
For the sake of content, I had to pull Jason out of bed to do this segment where we talk about what teams are good and what teams are bad. Mine might be reversed. You might think so. You want to go first? How about you go first, Jason?
It's your show today. Sure, I'll go first. It's your show today.
Yeah,
absolutely. I have no problem going first. All right, Sam. Look, Contender Pretender this week. I was just talking about it with Sam during the break. There's like 11 teams out of the entire AFC that are either 4-3 or worse. So, I mean, there's just so much mediocrity right now. I didn't do the same for the NFC. I was just looking at the AFC at the time. But it's so difficult because it feels like every week teams that are contenders could slip to pretenders and vice versa, depending on just one week, because it's the difference between 4-3, 3-4, 5-3, 3-5, that sort of thing. I want to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, they're an obvious contender at this point. You look at the AFC, everybody has one blemish this season. So nobody's perfect. Nobody is without their warts, so to speak. Jacksonville, to me, what I keep harping on is the fact that this team is so good defensively, and they have not yet lived up to their potential offensively. I take those things, I put them together with a Super Bowl winning head coach and a quarterback that, look, he's working at it. He's trying to get better, and I think he still will get better. I think he's growing with confidence. It's weird for me to say this, but I actually love Trevor Lawrence. I really do. Got a man crush on him right now. I think the Jags are going places. I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. can't remember who I was texting it to, but I think you could actually wind up seeing like a crazy Super Bowl, like a Jacksonville-Detroit Super Bowl right now. I don't think it's nuts. You know, I think this thing is that wide open right now. I don't think anybody's untouchable. I don't think anybody's inevitable. So Jacksonville gets my first spot. The Ravens have to get another. I mean, Baltimore right now, if we're talking about defense, this is the year of defense around the NFL. And if you talk about a team that I don't think is still living up to their capabilities offensively, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens, along with Jacksonville. Both of those teams are really good defensively. How great would a playoff game be between the Ravens and Jaguars? I'd pay to watch that. Detroit Lions. Look, I mean, the NFC, we all like to think Philadelphia is still that juggernaut when you look at their record, but they have their warts, they have their blemishes. They had their one bad loss at the Jets just a few weeks ago in Jersey. So obviously you look at a team like Philadelphia and say, well, they're not inevitable. All right, if it's not Philadelphia, then who else is it? The 49ers have lost 3 in a row. They got a confidence problem at quarterback. The Dallas Cowboys are the Dallas Cowboys. Who does that leave you with? The Detroit Lions, who haven't won in forever. They're great at home. There's a very good chance they're going to get to play a lot of home games in the playoffs, where they have been close to unstoppable this year. Sans Seattle, who seems to have their number for some strange reason. Wouldn't mind seeing those two play in the playoffs either. Detroit is a special team right now. They've got something going on there, and I think the Lions would have to be considered my third contender. Now, as it relates to pretenders, some of these might seem obvious, some of them might not. The Vikings have to be considered a pretender at 4-4 because of the fact that Josh Dobbs is their quarterback. This kid Allen, I think, is going to be the quarterback this week. You lose that game, you're 4-5. Then you're turning it over to Josh Dobbs at that point to see what he can do. And Josh Dobbs, don't get me wrong, I'm kind of a Josh Dobbs guy. I like some of the things he's been able to do at quarterback. I think he got an unexpected opportunity in Arizona and has shown signs that he could actually play. Last few games hasn't been so good. Obviously, that's why they saw him as disposable, especially with Kyler Murray coming back. I'll say right now, Minnesota has to be considered a pretender. I'll tell you what, though. Give them credit for bouncing back from an 0-3 start. The Saints at 4-4. Wake me up. They're not going anywhere. The Saints are done. I don't care if they're 4-4. I know some people might like, because of that division, to think that they might be able to do something. I'm not on the Saints bandwagon. I haven't been all year. New Orleans isn't going anywhere right now. They're a pretender. The Texans. This one pains me. Because I like what DeMeco Ryans has done. But you can't lose to Carolina. I know Carolina had to beat somebody eventually, but it can't be you if you're Houston and you want me to consider you a contender. You're 3-4 at this stage of the season. That's going to be a one-team division as far as the playoffs is concerned, and we know who that one team is. We mentioned them as a contender. So my contenders for this week, Jacksonville, the Ravens, the Lions. My pretenders for this week, the Vikings, Saints, and Texans. Sam, it's all yours.
I would just like to say that during our trade deadline spectacular, I guess we can call it, yesterday.
Okay.
I got in your head so hard when I was talking about who the Vikings should deal for at quarterback. And I said, what if they traded for Kyle Allen of the Buffalo Bills? The Bills would never give him up because they actually value Kyle Allen a lot. You said that Kyle Allen would be starting for the Vikings this week during that segment.
No, not Kyle Allen. Not Jared Hall. That's who I meant. You meant
Jaron Hall.
That's what I meant. Jaron Hall. Yeah.
I just have so much real estate up there that I got you thinking that Kyle Allen was going back to Minnesota, which he should be. It would be a great fit. That's beside the point. Minnesota leads off my contenders list this week. And Jason and I are actually going contrarian on two teams. We'll get to the second in a second. The Vikings, my gosh, what a situation they found themselves in. This is a team that could very easily win 4 of their next 5 games. Seriously, even with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. Because what did Josh Dobbs show when he was in Arizona through the first 8 weeks of this season? He showed that he was a game manager on a talented kind of team. Now he's joining a team that has at least twice as much talent around him on offense. He's going to manage his way to 4 wins in their next 5 games at least. They may go a perfect 5-5. And this is a team, let's not forget, that play the Lions 2 times in 3 weeks to end the season. The NFC North is wide open right now. Do not be surprised if the Minnesota Vikings are competing for it in those last 3 games of the season. I think it's going to come down to Lions-Vikings in weeks 16 and 18. That will really decide the NFC North. My next contender, also contrarian to Jason, the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints could be a 10-win team that easily wins the NFC South and gets them into the playoffs. Look at the Saints' schedule. They actually ran into an easy one this year, and if Derek Carr and Rashid Shaheed can really lock down that combination, that 1-2 punch in that offense, the Saints offense can carry them to 10 wins this year. My final contender, this one was hard for me to write down. It's the New York Jets. The New York Jets are my last contender. I think there's a chance that they get a wild card spot, even without Aaron Rodgers. The Jets scare me. They do. That defense, Jason and I talk about it all the time, that defense is very good. They're not great, but they're very, very good. Zach Wilson has learned a lot. He's come a long way in the last calendar year alone. The Jets are going to win 9 or 10 games, and I'm starting to think that that is going to get them a wild card spot. Review my contenders: Vikings, Saints, Jets. My pretenders: the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are going to lose 8 games this year. The Seattle Seahawks will finish the year as a 9-8 team. They're not going to win the West. They might get a wild card in a very strong NFC where the Cowboys are definitely already getting 1 wild card. I think that the Seattle Seahawks might miss the playoffs. My second pretender is the aforementioned Dallas Cowboys. There's an outside chance this team finishes below 500. Seriously. Dak Prescott might be throwing less interceptions, which I know was his big thing coming into the season. He's going to throw less than 10 interceptions or whatever. He's at 5 through 8 weeks, so not quite pacing that. He also has less passing yards than Mac Jones. He has fewer passing yards than Mac Jones. Dak Prescott is not a good quarterback at this point in his career. Not that he really ever was at any point, but I'm just saying this point to save my butt. He has fewer passing yards than Mac Jones. The Cowboys are a pretender. They also don't have their best cornerback. Let's not forget that. The Cowboys, like I said, might finish below 500. My last contender. This one ripped my heart out. I am a soulless human being for putting this team on my pretenders list. Buffalo Bills are pretenders. This team is destined to finish 9-8. They probably won't make the playoffs. If they do, it's a one and done. Talked about it on the show over the past 5 weeks at this point. Injuries mixed with the strength of schedule that the Bills have this year was going to derail them the second they lost a key player for even a few weeks. This was not meant to be the Bills' year, and it's not going to be. I think that they'll barely finish above 500. It's going to be the worst year of Josh Allen's career, and I would not be surprised if the Bills miss the playoffs. My pretenders, the Seahawks, the Cowboys, and my beloved Buffalo Bills. My contenders, the Vikings, the Saints, and the New York Football Jets.
I'm trying to understand how you can in one breath say, well, the Seahawks may not get a wild card spot because the Cowboys might, but then you're calling the Cowboys a pretender. I'm kind of confused on that.
One of those will be right.
So you're hedging. You're become a gardener, is what you're saying.
Listen, it's not betting. I can hedge all I want.
You got
with
yourself
statements.
a hoe. You got yourself a little pick. There you go. And you're a gardener. Okay, all right. I just wanted to verify that that's what you were doing. Carry on.
I think that was one of our stronger contender pretender segments.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
I think it was.
I think it's getting. You said something about this. I don't know, maybe three weeks ago. I don't know. It all blends together. But you actually said something. No, but you actually said something that I think resonates now that I'm sitting here looking at the list, and I've gone back through some of the other contender pretender lists. It's very difficult in a league that's as mediocre as this is right now, where there's so many teams in that sort of mid-level. It's very difficult. It feels like week to week we're vacillating on, a good word for you to use today, vacillating on teams that are in the middle. Next week we could have, you could have the Seahawks as a contender, or next week if the Vikings win this week and they're 5-4, all of a sudden are they a contender? It's really difficult week to week to try and put this list together.
If the Jets get blown out this week, they're going to be the first on my pretenders next week. We talk about it all the time. It is a week-to-week league. The Kansas City Chiefs scored 9 points against the Denver Broncos, and that defense gave up 24 to Russell Wilson at this point in his career. The NFL is the most week-to-week league maybe of any on the planet.
Yeah, I agree.
When you imagine comparing the NFL to F1. Now I get why Europeans don't like the NFL all that much, because they're the same with soccer. They're used to the same teams being at the top year after year. It all makes sense a little bit, but the NFL, dog eat dog, week to week league, Jason. All right. Halfway done with the sports wrap on the first day of November. My gosh, I keep saying that because I can't believe how fast 2023 has flown by. We've only got 2 months of this year left. World Series talk and wrap up the show on the other side. Sam Yarnell in for Jason on the Sports Wrap. It's the Sports Wrap on a Wednesday. Sam Yarnell in for Jason, as I am every Wednesday. It's the real party day on the show, Wednesdays. It's the day where we have all the fun. Last night was not fun for me. World Series Game 4, Rangers annihilate the D-backs. 11-7, and the score does not reflect how close the game was. Big news before the game, Adolis Garcia, out for the rest of this series with that oblique issue. Max Scherzer out for the rest of the series. Both have been replaced on the Rangers' postseason roster. Ezekiel Duran for Garcia, Brock Burke for Scherzer. It's a tough loss for the Rangers. I thought that was going to do them in. And then they turn around and put up an 11 spot on the D-backs. They put up 10 runs in 2 innings, scored 5 in the first. They hit for the cycle as a team in the second inning and scored 5 runs. And then they did the same thing in the third. They scored 5 runs again. It was 10-0 at the end of 3. And then I changed the channel. It was tough. D-backs really tried to put together a comeback there at the end. They scored 7 runs in, I want to say, or 6 runs in 2 innings. It's not quite enough. The Rangers are rolling. They're 1 game from their first World Series title ever, which was hard for me to believe because I felt like during that early 2010s period, the Rangers were in it every year. How did they come away from that without a World Series title? Oh, yeah. They were within a strike of one twice. And then it was the legend of David Freese. And Joe Buck saying, "We will see you tomorrow night." And all the rest is history. I think that the D-backs still might have a chance in this series, based on a myriad of things. History pointing to the fact that the Rangers very well may choke again. There are cursed organizations in professional sports, as much as people want to say that there aren't, and that they're all fallacies. Cursed organizations do exist. I root for one of them. I just keep looking at this series now and telling myself, this is exactly where the D-backs were with the Phillies. They get routed in back-to-back games. They have the Phillies on the brink of moving on. They have their opponents on the brink of moving on here, needing to win. Then it was 2, now it's 3 straight games. Can you not just write the story yourself? Because I'm reading it and I'm really liking it. I think the D-backs are still alive in this series, as foolish as it sounds. I think they still have a chance. And it starts tonight with their ace on the hill. Game 5, backs against the wall, elimination game. At home, in the desert, snakes alive. Uvalde Gallon tonight at Chase Field. Pick 'em right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook, -108 to either side.
Sam, do I sense a hint of Diamondbacks to win the series at +850 as a value bet?
Jason, I've been saying it for the last 3 minutes. I'm glad that the voice of God has his headphones in, because yes, that is what I'm saying.
I didn't hear you say Diamondbacks +850 that you were going to take them.
I don't want to say it outright because I took them at +250 yesterday, so that would look real stupid of me. It would look real stupid of me, Jason. But +850, my gosh, the book's giving money away at that point. It starts tonight. Zach Gallen, Nathan Uvalde. Pick 'em to 108 to either side, -108, which, by the way, different conversation that we should have one day on the show about how a pick 'em these days is -108 to either side. You have to lay 8 cents on the dollar both ways. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Total's 8.5. Juice to the over here. Interesting. Understandably, with the way that these last 2 games have gone, but with these 2 pitchers on the mound, you want to think about taking the under. My play for the game, not the over, not the under, not the side, not anything. Tommy Pham anytime homer, +630. You're welcome. Tommy Pham anytime homer. We'll see if there's still baseball after tonight. I sure hope there is. I think the D-backs will stay alive. Regardless, I'll be happy for the Rangers if they win their first World Series tonight. Come back and wrap up the show on the other side. Sam in for Jason on this Wednesday. It's the Sports Wrap. Wrapping up the show on this Wednesday, November 1st. Sam Yarnell in for Jason Page on the Sports Wrap. He'll be back tomorrow, don't worry. All you LLs and LWs out there. That stands for loyal listener and loyal watcher. Those of you scratching your head thinking, what did that stand for? I got to get to this before we get out of here. And I don't know how it's getting so buried in the news cycle, seemingly. The story came out this morning. We're recording this in the early afternoon, and I haven't seen very much about it. Maybe it's because of the Mark Davis situation, or the Raiders situation in general, I should say. The other news going around the news cycle in the NFL right now. Michael Bidwell, the Cardinals owner, had an article written about him and the workplace culture in Arizona working for the Cardinals on ESPN that came out this morning. And some of the stuff in there about his management style is very worrisome to me for a variety of reasons. The first being, essentially, it seems like Michael Bidwell just has anger issues and likes to take his anger out publicly on his employees, which he feels so entitled to do. Now, there was a source quoted in the article saying you're either an enemy of Michael Bidwell or a future enemy of Michael Bidwell, because he has this innate ability to turn on people with whom he does deals. And there are lots of sightings to his legal work in getting State Farm Stadium secured, so on and so forth. But essentially, it seems like he just takes out his wrath on the closest person to him and doesn't really care about stabbing people in the back. On its face, doesn't seem like a huge issue, right? We had bosses all the time throughout regular society. Now, you have to contextualize this story a little bit in a context where we are less than 6 months removed from the Washington Commanders going through their entire ownership scandal on the basis of something that seemed very similar to what Michael Bidwell is doing, at least at the beginning. Maybe at the end it got a little more irrational. I don't even know a good word to describe what Dan Snyder did in Washington. A little more explosive? Sure. But at the beginning, it was definitely comparable to what Michael Bidwell has seemingly been doing in Arizona for the last 2 years. Bidwell, like Davis, part of a family that has been in the NFL for generations, part of an ownership family that has moved franchises through multiple cities. When you have someone who has this profile, this platform in your league, doing something like this, it needs to be acted against incredibly swiftly. It's the only way to handle these kinds of things. Quite frankly, the NFL has already dropped the ball on that, just like they did with the Dan Snyder thing. It's going to turn into the same type of situation. You're going to have people running to journalists to write more and more stories to defame the league and ruin the reputation that owners have. Because quite frankly, over the last 20 years, NFL owners have built this reputation themselves of being human beings who are more worried about dollar signs than other human beings, which is ironic as hell to me. Got to finish with a story out of Florida, because I'm tired of talking about Michael Bidwell and his anger issues and ineptness in running the Arizona Cardinals franchise. Sports betting is trending towards being legalized in Florida. There have been a ton of Supreme Court decisions over the last couple of weeks, but the big one today was that the Hard Rock Bet app, which is powered by the Seminole tribe in Florida, will begin allowing sports betting in the next 2 to 3 weeks. They'll be opening in-person sports books and Seminole casinos starting at the beginning of December. But this is huge for the sports betting world. Florida, obviously, with all the professional teams that they have, has been one of the more sought-after markets, right up there with California. Jason and I talk on the program all the time about how inconvenient it is for people not to be allowed to legally sports gamble in California and how much money the California state government loses every year.
We suck.
And I think this is a huge, huge step towards legalization across the board. Florida was one of the larger holdouts, and seeing them come as far as they have in not a short period of time, but by no means a very, very long one, is promising for sports betting and the sports betting industry. So some good news to finish up the show on this Wednesday. To our listeners down on South Beach in Miami, you'll be able to bet on your beloved Dolphins when they lose to the Buffalo Bills in late December. That's going to do it for the Sports Wrap on this Wednesday. Jason's back tomorrow. We got a Thursday night football matchup to preview. Talk all about that. Maybe we'll have a new World Series champion. Maybe the Texas Rangers get it done for the first time in 2023. Guarantee we'll be talking about Game 5 no matter how it goes. All that and much more. Probably got some big NBA stories too. Didn't even get to the NBA today. We'll get to it all tomorrow. Thanks for listening. It's the Sports Wrap.